Please welcome the panel on Powering Play, Leaders Defining the New Age of Gaming, moderated by co-founder of the What's Good Games podcast, Andrea Renee.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel on video games here at the Global Conference, Powering Play, Leaders Defining the New Age of Gaming. My name is Andrea Renee, and I've been a long-time video games host working in all kinds of media from daily gaming news, previews, developer interviews, onto digital programming strategy for some of the biggest gaming YouTube channels like Smosh Games and Machinima, and now recently working with publishers to help tell their stories and showcase their developers on stage at fan conferences like Comic-Con and PAX around the country. I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm joined by some fantastic leaders in our industry, because this is very much a fast-moving business that we're in. It's also evolving, and interactive entertainment is so much more than just cabinets in arcades and sessions of Super Mario Brothers that some people, like myself, fondly remember. How many people in the audience would consider themselves a gamer? Oh, yes, I love to see all these hands. We're taking the word back. Everyone's a gamer. You're playing Candy Crush? Gamer. Playing Solitaire? Gamer. Just go with it. Your grandkids will love it. Trust me. I am going to go ahead and get started by introducing our fantastic panel today. And they are going to be helping me look at what are the forces that are reshaping this gaming world, from major mergers and acquisitions that are redefining scale, from game-changing investments like Disney's recent stake in Epic Games, the increasing importance of IP in a world driven by very, very loud fandom, the accelerating role of AI in game creation, and how new platforms from cloud to VR are reinventing how games are made and how they're played. So please welcome, joining me on stage today, right to my right here, Anna Sweet, the CEO of Bad Robot Games. She spent her career in the heart of gaming innovation, leading teams at Valve and Oculus, and now building bold, story-driven worlds where film, TV, and games collide. Then we have Sean Shopta, who is leading games and interactive experiences at Disney, from Marvel to Star Wars to their partnership, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the panel. Sean is here to help shape some of the conversations around how iconic stories are brought to life through play. Then please welcome Gregory Milken, Managing Director at 1AM Gaming, an early-stage investor focused on the future of play, working closely with founders who are building the next generation of games and experiences and platforms. And please welcome, from the investment side, Michael Metzger, Managing Partner at Drake Star. He's advised hundreds of deals in the gaming space and brings a sharp view where the business side of games is headed. And last but certainly not least is Drew Kataoka, an artist and technologist whose work blends immersive media, AI, and storytelling. Her projects have reached people everywhere, from Silicon Valley to literal outer space. That's a real thing, everybody. And she's here to help share how artistry is evolving in the interactive age. Now, when you read the description for this panel, you probably were like, wow, that's a lot of stuff to cover in a very short amount of time. But we're going to try, right, everybody?
Yep.
Everybody's like, yeah, got my work cut out for me. I thought it would make sense to probably start the conversation with M&A, outlook. Are we consolidating? Are we expanding? Are we doing both? So, Michael, I think I would love to start with you. In the Drake Star Q1 2025 report, you highlighted a significant rebound in gaming's M&A with a $4.4 billion in disclosed deal value, the highest in nearly 2 years. Finally, an uptick. I think that's a good sign for everybody. What factors do you see are driving this resurgence, and how sustainable do you think this trend is?
So yeah, we had a fantastic quarter Q1. Key drivers was the Scopely acquisition of the gaming group of Niantic. And the second big one was the acquisition of AppLovin's games group. Those are two big ones. As you mentioned, it's the largest in almost 2 years. 2 years ago, Savvy, which is the Saudi's PIF fund, essentially acquired Scopely. That was the quarter that was even larger, now a little bit more than 2 years ago. So we see M&A continues to increase gradually, and we've been saying that for a while. And there's a couple of different factors. You can just look at dollar numbers, but you can also look at number of deals that happen per quarter. And there was crazy activity during COVID. Then things came down quite a bit. Q3 of 23 was kind of a low point with only 33 deals a quarter. And since then we saw a steady uptick. Q1 we saw 48 deals, also a significant uptick from Q4 last year of 40 deals. So we think it's going to continue. Key drivers are public companies, they all want to continue to grow. So growth, getting access to new IP is a key item. Then there has been a lot of kind of changes in strategy. AppLovin is one example. They decided we want to focus more on the UA advertisement side and not on the gaming content. There was a big divestiture. Aristocrat was another one, selling Plarium last year. Also Embracer, acquired a lot of companies over many years and decided to sell off a lot of them and break up the company in 3 parts. So I think that's a combination of all of those factors.
That was a lot. There was a lot of company names, a lot of deals happening. It's pretty easy to kind of get lost in the sauce. But I would love to hear, Gregory, from you, your insight about this trend of consolidation in the industry. Is this going to continue? Are we only going to have mega conglomerates and then the tiny little indies?
I don't think that's really the case. I think if you look at some of the deals that are happening in consolidation, from the outside, it might look like there's a lot of consolidation. But, we're dependent, on the investment side for M&A. So that needs to continue. But I think Michael made, an important point here. If you look at companies that have been focusing on consolidation, there's a natural cycle where that happens, and then it goes by the wayside and it goes in reverse. So Embracer is a good point, where there was lots of consolidation. And from the investment side, we're seeing a number of those companies who are leaving Embracer or being forced to leave, and they're looking for capital to become independent again. So it's reverse consolidation now, and they're looking to become independent and make their own way again. And then, who knows, maybe in 5 more years, they'll turn around and get acquired by someone else. I also think when we think about the big players, there's consistently new players entering the space. So if you went back a decade, you wouldn't say that Netflix, was an acquirer or consolidator in the gaming space, and now they are. So I think, from the tech side, you're always going to have other players that are entering. So you won't always gravitate towards the same players. There'll always be new, larger tech companies that enter the gaming space.
Do you think that there's a single or even like a top-level group of motivators for people outside of video games and tech, like big entertainment companies, to invest? Because we're seeing more of that, people that are non-gaming looking to spend large amounts of money investing in the space.
Oh, I definitely think because of, everybody, talks about and thinks about IP creation. And as we've seen, and you'll hear probably from a lot of the other panelists, the idea that games can now fuel IP as comic books have done in the past. I think people are consistently looking for that as, an exclusive or something that they can trade on that creates value across many other sectors.
Everyone chasing the next Minecraft movie, right?
Yes.
Pretty good feather in the cap, that one. Drew, I would love to hear your perspective on this as somebody who is an artist herself and works with a lot of emerging technologies. Do you have concerns that the consolidation could potentially stifle creativity on the boots-on-the-ground level?
So in traditional markets, when you have a lot of mergers, you see fewer competitors, and then that may lead to more risk aversion. But even though these mergers have been a big driver in the past several years, I think that's not actually going to be the key driver going forward. I think the key driver is this incredible dawn of visual artificial intelligence technology that we're at right now. And I think it's going to affect small players and large players in very different but very interesting ways. If you're a small player now with a very little budget, you can do absolutely extraordinary things with hundreds of visual tools, whether it's Unreal MetaHuman or Unity Muse or these incredible world-building engines like Scenario or InWorld. And the best thing to do is really like lean into your creativity, take risks, and place your bets on the table, and the rewards will be high. But I think there's great opportunities for the big players too, because you can build on top of your amazing franchises and do really capital-intensive stuff that is supercharged with artificial intelligence, and you'll be able to do absolutely extraordinary things. So I think it's going to be, it's the dawn of a new era. I think that this is going to be the key driver, and it's going to be fascinating for both the small and the large players.
And I would love to hear your thoughts as well, because Bad Robot is a name that a lot of people recognize, and you guys have a lot of big IP under the film and studio side, but Bad Robot Games operates independently, and that is clearly a balance. Do you find that that independence allows you to take more creative risks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing when you're starting from the game's perspective is finding the fun, and I think that is this really magical thing that takes a lot of sort of care and feeding and nurturing. And if you start too soon with trying to decide, like, okay, what's the monetization, or what's the retention, or what is even, the stories that we're going to tell, you sort of lose track of that little element, that little spark of fun that you want to build into a great game. And so from our perspective, from the game side of Bad Robot, we do have access to a ton of amazing IP and creative teams, creative people. But we're actually starting from a spot of actually building original IP, because what we want to do is build a world from the ground up that all the parts of Bad Robot are excited to tell their stories in, and we want to learn how to work together and how to speak each other's language in a way that we produce something where everyone is authentically excited to tell a story in this universe. And I think that in the future, when we do work on some of the classic IPs that we're super fortunate to have access to, it will make us better at that, because I think it starts from this respect of, like, we have to make sure it's first and foremost fun if it's a game, and then we also have to trust the people who are the best storytellers in their mediums to then take that little seed and do great things with it.
I love that perspective, and Sean, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on that as well, coming from the large IP holder that Walt Disney is. As the EVP of the Global Games and Interactive Experiences team, how do you see the future of what the experiences is part of that? Because that to me is the most fascinating. It's like, it's not just the video games that people classically think of anymore. There's a whole new frontier of how people play together in digital spaces.
Yeah, it's an important point, and I think taking one step back, Disney's been a lot of things in games over a long period of time, and we made a real conscious decision about 6 or 7 years ago to really go out and work with the best game makers in the world, wherever they are, across mobile games, console games, PC games. And it was really with the intention to go tell original stories and really start to use and leverage the IP in ways that we previously hadn't. And I think that has built an incredibly good foundation for us that is now leading to where you are, Andrea, with this question around additional experiences that can be a part of gameplay, social experiences that can be layered on top of that. Our relationship with Epic is a good example of why we think that's so important. When you think about these converged experiences now that are happening inside of these big ecosystem games like Fortnite, where linear content makes sense, big social expressions make sense, user-generated content, creator-led content makes sense. And we certainly think that's foundational to the future of how we tell stories. And that's really critical in how we've laid out the vision we have for this relationship with Epic, and how we think about games in general as foundational experiences that you can layer additional experiences on top of. And that's really how we're thinking about the world now, and it's certainly a big part of how we're going to be thinking about our future.
And that was such an exciting announcement. I don't think that there's a person in this room that hasn't had a Fortnite experience of some kind, whether it's yourself playing with your friends, your kids, your grandkids, somebody at the office. I mean, it's become such a behemoth, but Epic Games is known for so much more than just Fortnite in the gaming industry, all the work with Unreal Engine. And do you see that part of the technological part of it really being the focus of what you guys are working on?
Yeah, that was a big part of why Epic made so much sense for us. We spent a lot of time over many years now licensing content into Fortnite very successfully. We knew that was a good audience, a good platform for us. Our IP resonates with those players really well. But to your point on the back-end tech that drives it all, which is the Unreal Engine, we as a company use Unreal not just for game development, but for theme park, live experiences, ride design. We use it a lot on the linear side for film and TV production. That as you think about that converged future, that future of experiences that I referenced a minute ago, you start to see a world where you can apply the things that have been created in this engine across multiple formats of content. And that's really powerful for us as we think about, again, that future state of storytelling, that we can bring linear expression, we can bring park experiential content, obviously games content, into a shared environment and publish through one engine versus having all these disparate parts that you're looking to figure out how you bring together. So Unreal certainly was strategic for us, and how we thought about that relationship.
And we have a slide with some details about this historic deal that you guys did. So if we could get that Disney and Epic slide up, that would be fantastic. Also, this QR code, if you guys want to submit questions, please feel free to do so. We would love to hear them. But while they're getting that up, Michael, you had mentioned in your comments when we kicked off this panel that IP is a huge part of what we're seeing in the deals that are happening. Now, do you have to be someone like Disney with a massive, valuable IP in order to be a deal maker at a table, or are you guys seeing more mid-level IPs really making a rise as well?
I guess there are a couple of factors. You could have, as a gaming studio, your own IP, develop that, and if you have built up a significant following over time and are able to monetize that, that's obviously a very attractive asset to have. A lot of the studios also decide to use a dual route to maybe work on their own IP, trying to make this as big as possible, but then maybe also license IP, for example, IP from Disney or some other companies. And over the last years, acquiring new users, specifically on mobile, got increasingly more difficult, and kind of having this dual path approach where you, on one hand, maybe work with a large IP, where you maybe get a lot of organic traffic, and also leverage the big brand spending from an IP from a company like Disney, together with your own, is maybe a good recipe.
Gregory, would you say that's kind of a rising tide situation we're seeing happen across a lot of these deals, that the strategic collaboration benefits both companies?
Oh yeah, I definitely think it benefits both, if the deal's done right and well. When we look at investment, we're looking at both sides of it too. I would say, from the entrepreneur perspective, probably their default is they want to create their own IP, and that's where they're coming from, for the majority of people we talk with. But there is a lot of value in licensed IP, and I think there's a lot of benefit in starting off and gaining audience through licensed IP. Always we have to weigh, and the entrepreneurs are always weighing, how much does that cost them, and back, in terms of guarantees back to the IP holder, and how much audience are they going to gain from that. So it's careful considerations, and sometimes entrepreneurs do that, and sometimes they walk away with it because the economics really aren't in their favor of how they view the potential for their future of their company.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a moniker, this idea of too big to fail, but there's been a sentiment that I've seen going around in games specifically that's like too big to succeed, that sometimes these budgets developing new IP specifically, or even sometimes maintaining a large IP, have to become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then of course you have to be more and more profitable in order to recoup the same amount of your investment. Is there going to be like a reckoning for that? Or do you think we're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and every game's going to have a $300 million plus budget?
I mean, I think we have seen some reckonings in the past couple of
yes,
years
there's
in
been
terms
some
of people
very
who have
unfortunate reckonings,
over-invested and spent, and hasn't achieved the level of success that's necessary. Also, in terms of timing perspective, a lot of times in the free-to-play industry, you need time to build that audience, and you can't have immense success on the day you launch. And I think a lot of companies have overbuilt and not built in enough leeway for themselves to achieve that runway and community building when they're live. And they fold because they just haven't given themselves enough time for everyone to see that product and for it to go viral.
Yes. I mean, we could do a whole panel on post-mortem, how some deals have tragically gone wrong and the human costs associated with that, the lost art, but I digress. I do want to talk a little bit about where anybody on the panel, and please feel free to jump in, are these deals about distribution? Are they about engagement, brand narrative? Because when you look from an outsider's perspective, who's someone that isn't investing in the space, it kind of goes, some of these partnerships make a lot of sense, like the Disney and Epic deal, that seemed like a tee-up win. But then you see some others that are like, why did they buy that person? What are they going to do with it? What are the secret plans? Is it just to make the company as big as humanly possible? Or is it some other kind of strategy that you've read the tea leaves on? Oh, this, I believe, is this the slide, Sean?
This was an early sketch of sort of what this world can look like that we're building with Epic. When we announced the deal last February, this is what kind of accompanied the initial press release we did, and this is just, again, a very early sketch of what a world can look like. It'll continue to evolve, but again, just to give people a frame of reference of scale and sort of how we're starting to map this big, broad ecosystem that we're building.
As long as my avatar can have my little backpack and my ears that I wear at the park, I'm in, sold.
Everything will travel. Everything will travel.
I love that for my customization future. I always like to do fashion show moment with my characters whenever I do game streams. It's kind of a problem. I always have a lot of clothes for my avatars. But back to the question that we were talking about, the idea of, do these big collaborations and consolidations, do they have a specific perspective, or are they purely just P&L driven? Michael, do you have any thoughts on that specifically?
Yeah, so we went through different phases. I guess taking the pure or more focus on the P&L, that probably was one of the strategies Embracer pursued.
It almost became comical at a point, trying to keep track of how many IP they owned. I think it was over 200 at one point that they had acquired.
And I mean, it worked fantastic if you're trading at a 20+ EBITDA multiple and you acquire a company at, let's say, 10. You can do that all day long as long as you keep your growth on your top line. But I think that was also very unique. Most of the strategic acquisitions are actually strategic. It's either an Asian buyer wants to have a presence or access to a Western IP in the studio, or the other way around, or they want to have a presence on other platforms. Some of the Asian acquirers who are very successful now on PC console are now actively looking at, let's say, casual mobile games as a diversification of the overall strategy. So most of the deals that are happening these days actually have that the buyer has a really good strategic reason for it.
Well, I sure would hope so with the amount of money that's exchanging hands, right? I do want to focus a little bit about the importance of transmedia. We've talked a little bit today about how established IP is very exciting to investors. I mentioned the success of the Minecraft movie, but there's a lot of other forms of transmedia out there besides just feature films. We're getting streaming TV series, we're getting digital shorts, we're getting custom clothing and merchandise. It's all part of the big transmedia universe. Anna, from your perspective as CEO of Bad Robot, transmedia is part of the job. It's like baked in, coming from Bad Robot's roots. How do you, as a leader, how are you managing what part you're keeping in games and what part you're exploring in other mediums?
Well, I think if I had to summarize it in one sentence, I would say it can't be treated as marketing. Like, I think for too long, we've used IP as a way to sort of get noticed. But we're making a great game, and I want lots of people to play it, so I'm going to put an IP on top of it that has a lot of fans. And I think we're just well past the point of fans being interested in that. And I think if you look at the things that have been very successful in the last few years, it's things that have been made in other mediums by people who were clearly fans of the first one. So if you look at like The Last of Us TV show, which is incredible, like the people working on that show clearly had a deep reverence for the IP and the world that was in the game. If you look at like the Fallout series, that one is also super fun. Some of those games are incredibly old at this point, and yet when that show came out, a whole bunch of people went back and bought and replayed those, frankly, very old games. And I think it was because that show had a bunch of incredible moments that you felt as a gamer. Like, there's an amazing scene where they like go in a closet and they're looking around for ammo and they're like, oh, I have to stack up on this, which is a thing you do a million times in that game. And so it's clear that the people who wrote that story for that medium were fans of the original one. And I think when we're thinking about what we're building at Bad Robot, it's the exact same thing. I know what we're excited about for the game that we're making and the story we want to tell in that world with our game. But I'm not going to go to the film team or the TV team and say, like, take this story and tell it this way. I'm going to instead say, here is this world. What are you excited to tell in this world? What stories do you want to explore, and how do you want to do it? And I think it takes both that sort of fandom, but also that trust of then building a world that then the ultimate fans, the gamers and the viewers, are like, oh, I see myself in this. This is a world I want to be a part of.
Sean, I know that you and your team deal with this a lot too, with your IP, working with really renowned studios that have established, reputations of their own, but then you come in, and one of the ones that was incredibly successful that was recent, won a bunch of awards, was Machine Games, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle with Todd Howard leading that team, and Bethesda doing the publishing support. So how do you approach collaborations like that, coming from two big personalities in the creative space on their own, but then kind of meshing together to make a really cool project?
Yeah, I think the important thing, and I hit on it at the beginning, was really about empowering the best game makers in the world to tell original stories, right? And I think if you look at Disney, you would say, we would come in and say, this is the story we want you to tell, right? We're the experts on indie. That's really not how that game came about, and I think it's a really, really important part of the story is Todd had an incredible pitch for that game that we were really excited about, and that's really what we have found to be the sweet spot for us when there's a creator like Todd on the other end of the table that has passion for the IP, that has passion for the story, and they want to tell an original version of it through a game, right? It's not about Disney coming in and saying, this is the story we want you to tell. Certainly there are guardrails, there are things that we want to be mindful of as we do these things, but really I think the key thing for that game and every game that we've made that's had success is we've empowered that creator to tell an original story. And I think that is a key thing in how we approach game making in general, and certainly that's a great example of one that worked out well for us.
Drew, I know that you've been at the heart of this as well, working with people like Industrial Light and Magic on projects and being at the forefront of what's happening from a technology perspective with art. What are your insights into how those kind of cross-disciplinary partnerships work in those gaming experiences, working with people at established companies with IP?
I think it's important nowadays for everyone to think like a creative director and also to think like an engineer. I think it's important for artists to think like engineers and game developers, and for game developers to think as if they were artists. And with that cross-disciplinary mindset, I had the great pleasure of working on a project called Will Your Heart Pass the Test, which was a collaboration with Disney, Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic, Immersive. We worked for 6 months. I had a team of 40 people across 4 continents, and it's not easy working across all those time zones. It's late nights, it's early calls. Project management is really important, making sure that everybody is on the same page. And by the way, I think that all of these visual AI tools that are burgeoning right now are going to be absolutely extraordinary in transforming visionary leadership on any project, no matter what industry you're in, to be able to articulate very clearly where you want your team to go, what you want them to build, to be able to incorporate their feedback quickly, to be able to delegate with absolute clarity. But anyways, I had the great pleasure of working on that project. It was auctioned by Phillips Auction House in New York for quite a lot of money, and we rendered the final piece. The rendering farm at Industrial Light and Magic is called the Death Star, after
Amazing.
Star Wars mythology. And we had our own dedicated rack of 18 computers all strung together just to crunch and render this incredible piece, which we had lavished so much care over every pixel, over every light ray. And it was a great pleasure to work on.
I love that you brought this up because it was something that I had wanted to make sure we talked about, because there's so much chatter around AI, and it feels kind of like almost like a nebulous term in the sense that it could represent a lot of different things. But specifically for video games and creation, what you and I have talked about is how it's really creating what you called the Shopify moment in video game creation and development. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean when you call it that?
That's a great question, Andrea. I think we're entering a really exciting time where we have these open, artificial intelligence enhanced platforms where anybody can build game assets, mechanics, storylines, players, modders, fans, man on the street can all co-create with these really intuitive tools powered by things like Stable Diffusion and Runway. And it reminds me of going back in time to thinking about this big e-commerce moment when Shopify took command of the space and blew everyone out of the water because they democratized storefronts. And AI is democratizing world building. How extraordinary is that? And I think that we're going to really see a blurring between player and developer, and it's going to create a very robust participatory economy. But the moral of the story is you want to be Shopify, you don't want to be Magento.
Well, words to the wise. What I love is that Drew, because she's a phenomenal artist, brought a couple examples, because sometimes I think the conversation around what does it mean for AI to generate visuals? What does it mean for them to generate narrative? For people who aren't in the world of making video games and aren't developers, you have a couple short videos that we wanted to show that you have worked on, kind of demonstrating what a small slice of this technology looks like and how it could potentially be applied. So I'll let you go ahead and explain what we're seeing on screen.
Okay, so before I describe this video, I'll just preface it by saying I know that a lot of you listening online around the world and here in this amazing room are programmers, developers. You're building with AI today. But for the rest of everyone in the audience, if you haven't gotten your hands messy with AI code recently, now is the time to roll up your sleeves and do two things. I'd love to make a recommendation that everyone go out today, or maybe tomorrow after the conference is over, and go out and train a visual model. And second, go out and vibe code your own game. So by training a visual model, I mean, I'm giving this example I just played. The first part of it, if they want to play it again, is some of our Ambrosia artworks in the real world. These are physical artworks that were inspired by neural networks, and they exist in the real world. But then we took a curated data set of those photos and trained LoRA. LoRA stands for low rank adaptation and is a parameter efficient method for fine-tuning a model. And then we're able to generate artificial intelligence ambrosias according to certain parameters that were completely new. And reflective surfaces by the way, are very difficult to work with. But you can do this with so many different things. Anything in your life, anything in your gaming worlds that you want. It could be a character, could be a style, could be an environment, and then you can go train a model and get really interesting results that are super customized that you can't just do with the out-of-the-box things that are out there. Second thing is, I would love to recommend that everyone go out there and vibe code a game. It's really easy, it's not hard. You know, start with something like ChatGPT and Claude, open it up, start imagine a game that you've always had in your head but you've never seen out there, and have it generate the code, run that code, make some stuff, break it, have it all fall apart, rebuild it again, create something easy. You can make something about a numbers game or a bouncing ball, start really small, but just do it. And doing those two things, training your own visual model, and number two, vibe coding a game will give you a perspective on these industry trends unlike anything else. It will give you an intuition about what's going on. And I think if you don't do those things, you can't understand artificial intelligence right now, and if you don't understand AI, you can't understand the future of gaming.
That's a really powerful statement. It is.
Thank you. We have some good vibe coders out there.
I also support everybody being a game maker. More game makers, please. Video games for all. Michael, what do you think? Are you ready to go vibe code and let everyone know on the next table that you're advising on a deal?
Gonna
hey,
do
have
it.
you made your own model yet?
It's gonna be an amazing game, yeah, of course.
With his experience and expertise, it'll be fascinating. Like, everyone will be able to refract what their life experience and knowledge is and create something totally unique, and we couldn't do that even a year ago.
Yeah.
But I think what's also very important, even for startups, professional companies, like with those AI tools, it dramatically accelerates them being able to develop games. It enhances the creativity. So I think it's a huge opportunity for the industry, and I think it's gonna bring it to another level.
Gregory, you work with a lot of emerging technologies and startups. Are you seeing that teams are becoming smaller and smaller, but their output is growing because of use of AI tools?
I think right now we're seeing that teams are thinking about that they have to hire less people to accomplish the same things. I don't know that the output is growing, but the pace is growing. So something that they thought would take them a few months is now taking like 1 month. Or if they thought it would take a year, it's now to 6 months in terms of using AI tools. So we're definitely seeing speed increase, although the milestones might be the same. They just come quicker. Then I think we're seeing a slowdown in hiring. Some of that is, I think, trends across the industry, but also they're finding ways to accomplish what they can with the AI tools, where they felt they might have needed to hire 2 more people. They don't need to do that anymore. And then I'd just like to pick up on the democratization point. I think that's really interesting, too, within the companies. A lot of our companies are talking about how, in terms of creating the game or maybe a roster of characters, they're able to get more input from everybody across the company, not just maybe the artists or the designers, but the engineers are able to leverage their tools into ideas that they can be brought to the rest of the company. So everybody feels like they're even more involved and have a greater stake in what they're creating by leveraging these AI tools.
I think more voices at the table is always a good thing. I'm curious, though, how does that affect the financial planning and investment strategies? Because if you're doing something in a month that used to take 6, that would dramatically affect your burn rate on how you're planning for resources for your team over the course of a 3, 4, 5-year project, right?
Yes, I think there's a lot of thought going into that. I wouldn't say there's a clear answer yet. On our end, on the investor side, you want to make sure you capture the benefit of that, and that doesn't translate into we move faster, so we're going to do 100 more things because we're capable of that now. So I think there's still a balance in figuring out what efficiency you're gaining, but also maintaining that focus, so you're not thinking, okay, we can do more, so we should do more. And I don't know that that's completely played out because AI tools are new, and a lot of new ones pop up in the market. So I'll talk to some of our companies, and a month or 2 later, I'll check in, and they're using a completely different new AI tool. So there isn't real stability, I think, across the board in what they're using yet.
Andrea, can I just add one coda onto this notion of bringing all these new voices to the table, and the vibe coding example, which is, I just thought of this when I was listening to my fellow panelists, but Sam Altman famously talks about how there's going to be the one-person AI unicorn, and it's coming. And I say, we're not that far from having the one-person full stack developer, $100 million gaming franchise. So my
And Balatro's working on it.
my note to the audience, my note to the audience is, why not you?
Yeah, absolutely. Take your idea, make something cool. People will play it. And that also, I think, speaks to what's so awesome about games right now in 2025. It's not just that the creation is democratized, it's that the distribution is democratized as well. I mean, almost anybody can publish their own game on a variety of PC platforms. Mobile publishing has become a lot more approachable. I mean, even the big hardware makers have really robust indie game programs that have really flourished over the last 5 years specifically. It really feels like making a game or becoming a game creator is much more approachable than it ever has been. And that has a lot to do with these tools. And it's not just AI. There's all kinds of new technology tools. Anna, are you guys using any cool new tech at your company as part of your creation process?
I mean, I think our stance has been that we just need to be aggressively smart about it. I think when you're looking at these things, like certainly in the AI standpoint, things are changing on a daily basis. Like I agree with Gregory, like you see a tool, you're like, that's really cool, and then the next day you're being pitched an even cooler tool that you want to consider using. And so I think from our perspective, it's just almost a moment to sort of take a step back and reassess all the things we're doing, all the bottlenecks that make making games very expensive or take a lot of time, and see what's out there in terms of solving some of those problems for studios. And I think it's a really fun and exciting moment because I feel like we are doing an incredible amount of learning and sort of creative thinking around what the future of this medium is going to look like.
It's hard to kind of put a pin on it because it just evolves so quickly. And I think that's what makes games a unique challenge compared also to other forms of media, is that the audience is everywhere. But making a game for every single platform is not a small endeavor. It's becoming easier. We're seeing cross-publishing happening quite a bit. But Sean, as a company as Disney as a company has games that are on all kinds of platforms and are successful on all kinds of platforms, from mobile games like Marvel Rivals, or Marvel Snap, excuse me, to PC games like Marvel Rivals, and then more traditional console games, or my personal favorite, Disney Dreamlight Valley. If you guys want to talk about it afterwards, come find me. How are you guys balancing where you want to focus, or are you kind of a we go at all platforms equally strategy?
Yeah, I think the foundation we built on the licensing side that I keep referencing across, mobile console PC games is still a hugely important part of what we'll be doing now into the future. I think as we think about that next frontier, though, certainly getting into smaller experiences, more creator-led experiences, more social environments that we can create multiple experiences within are going to be a big focus. That does speak to the point on Epic and why that relationship for us is so strategic now, because it is that sort of new frontier where we want to tell stories, right? And that can mean mini games, that can mean user-generated content that tells that story. That can be us telling just that story in a different way. That can layer in other experiences, to my earlier point. So yes, we certainly want to be across all traditional platforms, and we really want to start to lean into that creator side and that shorter form expression that we think is going to be critical in the future.
I'm glad you brought up UGC, because it's something that I think is just incredible, the way that it has exploded in the last couple of years alone. So user-generated content has been in games for decades, but I think really the rise of platforms like Minecraft, Roblox, and Fortnite have really kind of taken it to this next stratosphere, especially the creator payout programs that we're seeing from companies like Roblox and companies like Epic with the Fortnite creative program. Michael, do you think that era of having a platform and creating the platform is something that people want to put more investment into? Or do investors look at something like that as still inherently risky because you're beholden to the creators making something on the platform once you build it?
I think building a platform that's loved by millions of people is like the holy grail. And investors love to invest in those companies, but likelihood of that happening is not very high for one specific investment. So I think investors are looking into those platform plays, but they're also very lot of exciting things are happening, leveraging the platforms and creating titles, leveraging UGC on those platforms, and make a real big business out of that. Like on Roblox, we just saw like the first wave of a new consolidation happening with Voltex buying Brookhaven, did a big financing around it, and we're expecting a lot of other deals like that happening in the months to come. And that's just one example where people leveraging a big platform like Roblox and monetize it.
How quickly do you think somebody could launch a new platform and maybe get it to scale? Because I stopped to like look at the timeline of some of these things, and like if you look at Fortnite's timeline specifically, that game launched with the Save the World mode in 2017. So not even a decade ago, and now look at the revenue it's driving. Gregory, do you think that that's possible for startup creators now, that they can launch something in 7 to 10 years, they can be making billions?
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. 7 to 10 years is definitely, I think, achievable. I think, it's the time frames that are shorter than that where everybody gets, wary. In a lot of people come in and say we're going to achieve that in 2 to 3 years, and that just doesn't seem achievable to me in terms of building the community. Because to be able to become a platform, you have to have built up that community. You have to have enough people that care, and that takes time. It's hard to engineer that, to happen very quickly.
Dare I say
yeah,
it's
from a venture
impossible to engineer that?
I don't know that it is.
It's like making a viral video. That's not exactly how that works, right?
But yeah, if from the investment side, if we didn't believe that something could, be that successful in 7 years, that would be, our business model will go under because we're counting on that.
I think it's very hard to start out from a point of saying, I'm going to build a platform. There's someone who worked on Oculus or I worked on Steam from its very earliest days. Those things were never conceived of I'm going to go out and build the next billion-dollar platform. Steam was solving a very real problem, which was keeping Counter-Strike players updated and on the same version of that game. And then from there, Valve went on to solve a bunch of really other hard problems that developers needed in order to grow their market share. And so Fortnite's the same way. I don't think Epic initially said we're going to build this giant UGC platform. They built a really great game that then had tons of people playing it and that were obsessed with it, and then they turned it into this incredible machine and platform. Discord, same thing. They set out to build a game that didn't work out and then pivoted to build something that solved a bunch of problems for bringing communities and gaming together. So I think that's really where you have to start from, is what is the hard problem that I'm going to solve, and then sort of follow that community and that growth, and that's when you end up at a huge platform.
Absolutely. I love seeing gamers come together and be passionate about things because it makes such amazing content that's super fun to play. And it never ceases to amaze me, the creativity, even from really, really young kids. I got to speak to some young women, high school students, that started creating with the tools in Roblox, and now they are developers on the team because the tools were available to them. And I just am very excited for the future of platforms. I do have a couple other discussion points here, but we did get some very interesting questions that I would love to pivot to from the Q&A. So, Sean, this first one is for you. Marvel Rivals was a surprise smash hit. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise. It was pretty good for Disney. It was developed by NetEase, a Chinese developer. How do you manage these creative projects, their risk and rewards, with the geography boundaries of the world and the globalization challenges?
Yeah, I think, look, as I've said, I think for us it's about working with the best game makers wherever they are. And so in this case, NetEase obviously is a Chinese company. We have a multi-title deal that we've had with them going back a number of years now, and this is the latest title that's come out, the most successful. Very proud of this game. I think it has surprised us to a degree of just how quickly it took hold. But that goes back to the indie point and every game we make, right? When there's passion for telling a story and there's passion for creating a certain game. In this case, NetEase had a great idea. We think the Marvel IP fit this genre of game incredibly well. And those two things coming together have really, built what is now, knock on wood, a very successful game that we hope, has a long life ahead. But it really is about that marriage, right, of great IP that we hopefully have and storytellers on the other side and great game makers that want to match that IP with a certain genre of game or a certain story that's going to resonate with audiences that hopefully can scale. And this is, again, Rivals is a great example of hitting all and checking all those boxes. And that really, for us, is the sweet spot. And again, that's what we try and do with these partnerships. It's hard. Game making is really hard, as I think we've all referenced. And so, when you hit like that, when you have those things all check, you get a really successful product. And that for one, from my perspective, has been a good one.
Gregory, how do you find new talent? Do you look for established companies, or do you look specifically in certain sectors for early-stage developers for investments?
Not really specific sectors in terms of genres or platforms. We're looking all across the gaming industry. I'd say, two major factors. It comes down to people and team, so usually the people working together, how do we think they function as a team, and do they function well together? And then past experience matters. So a lot of people that we look at and back might have worked at larger studios and want to strike out on their own to do their own project. So a major factor for us is, have you built and shipped a game or had a major role in that, is what we consider when we're looking at backing people.
Has there ever been a time where you took a risk? Or you just really believed in the vision even though they hadn't shipped anything?
Well, I guess maybe at a smaller scale and things, or people might be shipping things in it's not core to what they've done in the past. They're pivoting to something new that they don't have experience in. But someone has to have executed on something in some sense. So maybe it isn't, directly shipping a game, but, driven a project to completion and awareness, for us to want to back them.
Drew, how are you using AI in your creative process? You talked a little bit about this. They did ask, would you recommend training visual models and vibe coding? And I love that you already answered that question. So check on that. But I love some of the really unique things that you're doing, and I think it would be great to hear kind of what you're using right now, a project you're potentially working on.
So there's another video that we have, which was, I think, video 1. I don't know if it was video 1 or video 2.
I think it was video 2.
Video 2. You can see I trained I trained a visual model on myself. So it took so many photos, curated a data set of photos of myself, and then generated an AI version of myself that's not real, and then deployed it in different environments and did some fun things with it. And this is a great example of what you can do with different characters. And I think that in the future, players will have Laura packs that they can trade and create, and so on and so forth. But along with all of this creation, I think there's another really important and kind of unsettling issue for creators out there right now, which is we create all of these things, but then the AI engines are just ingesting all of that content and training on our data. And it's funny because I went to one of the well-known platforms a couple months ago, and it said, create an artwork in the style of Drew Kataoka. And the results were really startling. By looking at what it gave me, I could see that it had clearly trained on not only my work, but the style of the work and also how I think. And then I asked it, create a work in the style of Leonardo da Vinci. And it said, no, we can't do that. That's against our guidelines. So I think that it's inconsistent, and it's also actually according to American copyright. I have copyright. Leonardo da Vinci doesn't have copyright. But it's really a kind of robbery that's happening right now, because the big AI platforms, they have to spend millions of dollars on engineers. They have to spend millions of dollars on hosting and on NVIDIA and all these different things, and they're kind of freaking out. They have to cut corners somewhere, so they're kind of taking it out of the creative content. But I think it's actually, I have a very optimistic outlook, which is that in the future, these engines, they are voracious for constantly new and high quality content. So the creative community has leverage because they have to come back to us to get more content. So there's going to be litigation, there's going to be royalties, there's going to be licensing that emerges, and it won't be an easy process, but it has to happen because it can't continue like this. And also, the increasing differentiator for these AI platforms is not just the model because we're hitting a certain ceiling with the transformer architecture in the near term. It's really an increasing differentiator is going to be the training data that you train your model on, and that comes from the creative community.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's a continuing, evolving conversation, and it's just like the tip of the iceberg of where we're going to see those conversations and those negotiations and deals go. Not for us, because we only have 5 minutes left. So I do have another question I want to get to into the Q&A before wrapping up, because I just think it's really fascinating. And I think this would be a great question for you, Anna, or Sean, if either of you have thoughts. Looking at the release of a game like Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, and their developer, Kepler Interactive, when you're looking at and valuing different companies and developers, or your competitors, how do you balance looking at traditional data points versus the creative heart or passion that a developer might have that will resonate with their intended audience, whether looking at it from a deal perspective or even just a collaboration?
Do you want to start?
Sure. Look, I think starting with that passion, to your point, is critical. I think that's sort of table stakes for any conversation. But then how is that, whatever that is created, what is the distribution behind that, right? Can that idea scale? What's the publishing plan? Is there an infrastructure to bring that story to life in a substantive way? So I think you need both, right? Certainly as we look at deals and we look at partners, a great idea and passion for that idea is critical, but then how do you scale it, right? Or do you have the infrastructure to publish? If you can't publish, can we go find a publisher that can bring that product to life at scale in a way that's going to bring broader audiences into it? But I think you've got to have both, certainly from our perspective.
I will go back to what I said earlier about finding the fun. Like, I think, especially in the game medium, there's nothing more important than a game being at its core fun. Like, I get to be a part of the Larger Bad Robot, this crazy creative institution, and there's lots of sort of ease to be distracted by like interesting worlds and great stories, and we just constantly center ourselves back on, is the core thing fun? Because if it's fun, and then you layer all those things on it, then you have a huge hit. And so when I look at something like a new IP that has just come to market and is suddenly like taking the world by storm, I think it's really at the core of that. Like, it started from something fun, they stood it up, they played it, they were like, yep, there's a magical spark here, and then they layered on all of that amazing world building and ability to talk about what it is and get it to market and get in front of gamers' hands. But you really have to sort of start from that very seed of, is it fun in its heart?
Because gamers will tell you if it's not fun.
Yes.
They will tell you loudly and swiftly, as we have discovered.
Yes.
Well, this has been a really fascinating conversation with everybody. I want to thank you all for your thoughts. I did want to wrap with a couple predictions, I guess, one from everybody of kind of your bold prediction of where the future of the industry is going. If you were going to like make a one-sentence prediction or a headline that we're going to read like by the year 2030. So, Drew, let's start with you.
That's a great question. So Mark Zuckerberg was recently in a video interview, and he said that in the future you're going to look at a reel, and then the reel's going to talk back to you, and then you're going to ask it a question, then you're going to jump into the world of the reel, and then you're going to be able to change what's happening in that world. And wow, what does that sound like? That sounds like a game. And so my prediction, I agree with him. I also agree that we're going to have an immersive future where we're 100% immersed. But my prediction is that linear entertainment is going to be completely subsumed by gaming. And that's why this is one of the most exciting panels to be at today. This is smart people in this room.
Michael?
Along those lines, by 2030, the biggest IP that year globally across all medium will have originated as a game.
I love that prediction. Gregory?
Along those lines, I think I would like to read the headlines for the day or the top news story that maybe the major traditional media companies or even companies beyond that, the new CEO has been chosen because of gaming expertise and experience. And that's the driving factor in choosing the CEO.
We're taking over, everybody. Sean?
I think I'll just say, I think there's been a lot of new technology that's come about just even in the last 10 years that hasn't met the moment. I think AI is going to meet the moment.
Absolutely. Anna?
I guess I'll double down on that. I think with sort of the new world of vibe coding and the democratization of creating worlds, I think by 2030 we will see a $1 billion IP that was created by a team of, let's say, 5 people or less.
Incredible. I believe in the future for everybody. We're creative people, us gamers, and we're in all the neighborhoods. You think that there's not a lot of us, but everyone's a gamer, as I started this panel out by saying. Thank you so much to everybody for joining me in this conversation. Thank you so much to everybody who is here in person and is watching online. We hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at Global Conference.